Okay, welcome to the last lesson for Module 5. We are still under communication for various purposes. So now we are on the second lesson, which is communication for academic purposes. Before we start with the main discussion, let us first define what we're actually talking about as the academic purposes here, which is academic writing, or we also call that as scholarly writing. So this is the most important skill in the academic for the academic or like for in the academic context for the reason that writing is the main method learners or you as the students use to communicate in the school or in the academy. So academic writing is structured, it's evidence-based, it's critical, it's balanced, it's precise, it's objective, and it is written in normal form. So what we're going to talk about for today is divided into these five subtopics, which is the first one. We are going to define what academic integrity is and discuss the forms of academic dishonesty. And then we're going to talk about the genre for academic writing, of academic writing, and then academic referencing skills. And last, to aid in your actual writing, we have the elements of shaping a paragraph. So let's start with what academic integrity is. So when we define and when we talk about academic integrity, we are actually talking about the moral code or the ethical policy of the academia or where you are situated right now in the university. So this includes the values such as the avoidance of cheating, plagiarism, maintenance of academic standards, honesty, and rigor in research and academic publishing. So our aim mainly is not just to research, but also to publish. So maybe when you are already in fourth year, I guess, and when you're already done with your thesis, then maybe you can also consider, yeah, please consider publishing it. So we are going to talk about academic dishonesty, which is the opposite of academic integrity. So when we say academic dishonesty, this is the committing or contributing to dishonest acts by those engaged in teaching, learning, research, and related academic activities. And it applies not just to the students, but to everyone in the academic environment. So there are some forms, which I know you're quite familiar with the first three, which are cheating, plagiarism, fabrication or falsification, and then we have the obtaining of unfair advantage, aiding and abetting academic dishonesty, and the last one is unauthorized access to computerized academic or administrative records or systems. So let's first discuss the most familiar one, which is cheating. So cheating is using unauthorized notes, study guides, or aids or information on an examination. So if your teacher didn't allow you to open any notes, and if you did open, so it means that you are cheating. That's automatic cheating. So altering a graded work after it has been returned, then resubmitting or submitting it again for regrading is also considered as cheating. Allowing other person to do one's work and submitting that work under one's own name is also cheating. And of course, submitting an identical paper for credit in more than one course without prior permission from the course instructor is also considered as cheating. So submitting identical, okay, or similar papers for credit in more than one course. So like for example, I ask you to submit this kind of paper and then you and I already like give it back and then one of your teacher or instructor would give you like same sort of like maybe same activity and you dim or you realize that you can actually submit your work from my subject to that instructor subject and you did not ask my permission to resubmit that paper to that professor or instructor, then that is considered as cheating. And then the next is plagiarism. So plagiarism is a type of cheating, yes, in which someone adopts another person's ideas, word, design, art, music, etc. as his own without acknowledging the source or, when necessary, obtaining permission from the author. So plagiarism is something that is very discouraged in the academy, and we have some regulations in case someone plagiarized. Okay, so this is a very no-no in the academy or in any environment, learning environment. So we have a note here. We have the CTTO, or the credit to the owner or the original, which is very rampant in the social media right now, wherein some people would post an artwork or music and will just say their CTTO or credit to the owner. Um, this is not a proper citation according to the Intellectual Property Office of the Philippines, or the IFOPHIL. So when you actually do the CTTO, you are not actually I acknowledging, okay, the main author, and you are actually plagiarizing if you're doing that, okay. And then we have the fabrication or falsification. So when we say falsifying, fabrication, it means falsifying or inventing any information, data, or citation. So like maybe in the future, not really find any reference for your claims, or for the ideas that you put on your paper. So you just, yeah, sige, mag-invento na lang ako, like invent an author and a work. So that's actually fabrication. Okay, so that's bad. Presenting idea that were not gathered according to the standard guideline or with the methodology that you have presented, okay, is also considered as fabrication. Altering documents affecting academic records is also fabrication, and even the forging of signatures is, of course, fabrication. Okay, and then we have the next one, which is obtaining an unfair advantage. So it means stealing, reproducing, circulating, or otherwise gaining access to the examination materials prior to the prescribed schedule by the instructor or by the school. It's also stealing, destroying, defacing, or concealing library materials with the purpose of depriving others of the use of that material. It's also the unauthorized collaboration on academic assignments. So meaning like when I ask you to do a work, for example, and then you ask, or you collaborated with a classmate, one of your classmates, without informing me that you two collaborated, that's is considered as obtaining an unfair advantage. And then we also have your retaining, processing, using, or calculating previously given materials where those materials clearly indicate that they care to be returned to the instructor at the conclusion of the examination. Okay, so like inuwi mo yung test paper. Okay, so like for example, final exam, and you just took your test paper home. So that's obtaining an unfair advantage. Okay, so that's also a form of academic dishonesty. And then also included with that is intentionally obstructing or interfering with other students' academic work, or recycling one's own work done in previous classes without obtaining permission from any concerned instructor. And also, you're undertaking activity with the purpose of creating or obtaining an unfair academic advantage over other students' academic work. So this is all like driven by selfish motives. So the next group or the next academic dishonesty that we're going to discuss is aiding and abetting academic dishonesty. So it's providing material, information, or other assistance to other persons with knowledge as such aid could be used in any violations already discussed. So when you're aiding in cheating, when you are the collaborator with the dishonest act. So this is what we're talking about here. It's also providing false information and connection with any inquiry regarding academic integrity. Next is the use of unauthorized access to computerized academic or administrative records or systems. So this includes viewing or altering computer records, modifying computer programs or systems, releasing or dispensing information gained via unauthorized access, and interfering with the use of availability of computer systems or information. Okay, so those are the forms of academic dishonesty. And we move on to academic writing. So, according to, I guess, one of the main contributors of our module for the purposive communication, Segako says that writing an academic paper, it is the best way to actually do that or to start is to list the topic sentence or the ideas first so that along the way you will be able to merge and incorporate other paragraphs. Also, it keeps your writing focused and it makes it easier for you to achieve unity and coherence in your writing. In academic writing, we have what we call thesis statement. So, thesis statement or theory is what we put forward as the premise to be maintained or to be proved. It's the major element in your paper that shows assertion, message, central idea, and the remaining paragraph demonstrates support to that topic. So it will help if you create an outline so that you can organize your ideas logically and sequentially. So what are the main parts of um, this writing? We have the introduction, we have the background. Commonly, we include your review of related literature, the body, and then the conclusion. So, when we say introduction, okay, so let's first discuss introduction, of course. So, when we say introduction, that is where you, in all sense, introduce your thesis statement or your topic. Okay, so generally it's where you um tell your point, what you want to tell them, to tell your audience or to those that will be reading your paper. Then we have your background. So background means what is the reason why the research is written. Okay, so this is the background of your study or of your material, your research. And then the review of related literature talks about the related materials or references that you have read that would support your statement, or if not support, prove some points on your argument or the idea that you wanted to share to your audience. And of course, you have the body where the discussion happens and the conclusion where it ties up everything together. Okay, so those were actually like the shortcut discussion for that. But if you're already in the writing process, we have more discussion under this part. And then we have academic writing. So academic genre are those genre of written and oral communication, privileged and places of higher learning, like in professional or in comprehensive universities, they are governed by rules and conventions regarding language, the language use, the standard, and the ethics of research. And also, we shouldn't forget the professional conduct where one is expected to acknowledge resources such as, your proper citation of authors, and a firm command of this genre does not come naturally. They must be learned, and true expertise is a long-term goal achieved to practice. Okay, so we have what we call your English for academic purposes, or your EAP, which teaches students to use language appropriately to study and publish in the academy, so inside the school. Also, the EAP focused on the processing and the creation of English as it is used in the academic context. So, according to Hackett, with the teacher facilitating the students' participation in the academic world. Genres are generally categorized or categories of text which follow specific to. You have one, the rules, which simply mean the things that can and cannot be done, and the second one is the convention, which refers to the traditional or the expected ways of doing things. We have here a short or a a graph or a graphic organizer to show that. One, it offers consensual, structured ways of writing, reading, and writing, and it serves as a contract between the writer and the reader in which particular expectations are observed and followed. So, what are the genres of academic writing? We have first one, we have the abstract. So, abstract is a brief summary of a research article, a thesis, a review conference, a proceeding, or any in-depth analysis of particular subject or discipline, and is often used to help the reader quickly ascertain the paper's purpose. It always appears at the beginning of the manuscript, acting as a point of entry for any given scientific paper. In science, an abstract may act as a in lieu of the paper. The abstract can also convey the main results and conclusion for a scientific article, but full-text article must be consulted for the details of the methodology, the full experimental results, and the critical discussion of the interpretations and conclusions. It helps to consult the abstract, but consulting the abstract alone is not enough for scholarship. So, abstract length varies by discipline and publisher's requirement. So, typically, we have 100 to 500 words, but very rarely more than a page. So, supposedly, it should be contained in just a page or even half of that page. So abstract are typically sectioned logically as an overview of what appears in the paper with a background, introduction, objectives, method, results, conclusion as the normal flow of it. And an abstract allows one to look through conspicuous amount of papers at once, in which the researcher can have more confidence that that paper, the manuscript with that particular abstract is relevant to the research that researcher is conducting. So overall, abstracts help researchers to decide which papers might be useful or is connected to their research. Um, and then we have the next one, which is the book review. So this genre of academic writing typically evaluates the recently written works. It offers a brief description of the key points of the text and often provides a short appraisal of its strengths and weaknesses, its pros and cons. So unlike articles, book reviews tends to be solicited. They typically run from 500 to 750 words and maybe even longer or shorter. Again, it depends on the publishing or the requirement where the book review will be published. The length and depth of the research book reviews vary much from journal to journal, so as required again by the publisher. And then we have lab report, or we have them called as your laboratory reports or your experimental reports. These are your detailed results of experiment and experimental research projects and are most often written in experimental psychology courses or psych lab. Experimental reports are write-ups for the results after you have conducted research with participants. So, and then we have research articles. So, a research paper is the culmination and the final product of process of research, critical thinking, source issue, organization, and composition. We think or thinking growth and changes as the student explores, interprets, and evaluates resources related to a specific topic. Sources as evidences proof back the and there are two main types of support. We have primary source and we have secondary source. As of the research paper is to that living organism thing. The primary source or original document or account is not another account but hands on phone. So for example, novel um, guide research also constitute as a primary source for one lie. On the other hand, the secondary source gives information about primary source and is concerned second-hand information. So a journal article or a book about poem, novel, or play, or a commentary about what an interview signifies is considered as secondary source. So um, the paper then, if ever you're going to make one, will become a secondary source when it's finished. The research paper serves not only to expand the field in which it is written, but it also provides the students or the researchers with an exceptional opportunity to increase their knowledge in that particular research field that they have chosen. So its goal is not to inform the reader of what others have to say about a topic, but to draw on what others have to say about a topic and engage the sources in order to offer thoughtfully a unique perspective of the issue at hand. And then we have conference presentation. So um, conference are a major source of cutting edge research, particularly in science and engineering. At conferences, researchers present their papers on research they completed and obtain feedback from the audience. The papers presented in the conference are usually published also in a volume called the conference proceeding or conference proceedings. And normally during a presentation or conference, they also follow their own format when it comes to presenting, like maybe what font to use or how many slides will how many slides will be used in the actual presentation. And then we have your academic referencing skills, which are generally divided into two, which are the language reference skills. When we say language reference skills, this includes the efficient use of dictionaries and books. And the other one is academic reference skills, wherein this pertains to library use, the giving references in this in thesis and dissertations. And then we have the three elements that shape the content of a paragraph. So why do we talk about paragraph? So although sentences, although words or syllables are like the smallest unit of language that we have in a write up or in a material, we have paragraph as mainly one of the focus or the grouping of ideas in the write-up that we use.